Hey everybody, this week Aaron and I are doing a video together where we're going to address a question that's come up. First, I want to preface this with Aaron just yesterday actually started up a brand new Facebook group or page called supporters of Leah Remini and Scientology in the Aftermath. Sorry, which I have to differentiate from another page called Fans of Scientology and Leah Remini in the Aftermath. So this new page, Aaron is the main moderator on, and other exes have come on as moderators, and there are one of the appears to be one of the primary purposes of this page is not only to give a place for people to give feedback and commentary and support for Leah's show, but also to ask questions, because there are so many questions people have coming into this, and Leah's show is reaching millions and millions of people now. And so, where Aaron and I and others have had whole videos answering people's questions, there's really so many that not any one of us can deal with all of it. And so this page is there for a lot of people to, a lot of exes to jump in and contribute their experience and knowledge. And one of the questions that came up yesterday was the question of, how do we land on our feet? What do we do? How do we get jobs? How do we support ourselves coming out of the Sea Org and coming out of Scientology? And it's a good question, and it's one that requires really more than a line or two of an answer. So Aaron and I thought we would do a video together to address that, talk about our own experiences with it, and what we've seen with other people. And so Aaron, thanks for doing this with me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I thought this would be fun. So,
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything about that new page?
Well, I guess all I would want to say is the page is anyone who is a contributor to the Scientology and the Aftermath is welcome to be a moderator or an admin. I want there to be as many voices as possible. Not voices, because the voices are not the moderators. The voices are the members. I didn't want the determination over what people are allowed to say to be in the hands of like 1, 2, or 3 people. And the rule I've set down for the page is this isn't a page where there's things are off limits. This isn't a page where people are going to be offended that you ask the wrong Scientology question. You're not going to be blocked for asking stupid questions or for asking a question that's already been asked 100 times. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people that are going to be asking questions. They're not going to join a Facebook group and do a page search to find the answer to their question. People join groups and they ask questions.
Yeah.
So all of the contributors are invited to be moderators on it, and most of the contributors are already on the page answering people's questions. So if the purpose of the page is to support the show and learn more about the people on the show and learn more about the story of Scientology and get questions answered about Scientology, it's a great place to go and get your questions answered. And I think there was one more thing I wanted to say, but it kind of slipped my mind. But this question, I'm really glad that we're doing a video on it, because I've seen the question so many times, not just on Facebook, but in the YouTube comments all the time. Questions like, why do all the people on the that they interview on the show seem to have such nice houses? I thought they grew up as children in cults. In a cult. There was one episode where the contributors were flown in from out of the country and out of town, so they rented this beautiful home. And people were like, "What the hell?" Like, how are these people affording these nice homes?
Right.
And it is a great question, and the answer is important, and it also shows you a little bit of the split between the impression that people. It's easy to get the wrong impression, like. All the stories that are being told are totally legit and totally accurate, but if you just listen to the stories and you don't understand, you don't have firsthand experience of what it means to be in the Sea Org for 30 years or 15 years. And even though all these stories are being told totally accurately, you can see how the public at large still winds up with the impression that these people wind up like crippled in life and unable to think or unable to communicate or unable to operate in the real world, when the truth is, as evidenced by, the fact that everyone does seem to have more or less landed on their feet and has figured out how to make their way in the world. Somehow, all of us have been able to go through that experience and still also be a normal member of society. So let's explain how that happens not everyone's experience is the same. Some people do really, really, really struggle because people's experience while they're in the Sea Org is different, vastly different from person to person, even though so many of the experiences are the same.
Exactly. And
like for me, well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was also,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to make sure I mentioned before I forget or we get this lost. Also, the other thing to remember is that the people you're hearing from are the people that you're capable of hearing from. In other words, there are people who came out of the Sea Org, who've come out of Scientology, more often the Sea Org, I think, who, especially second gens, who had no idea what the real world was like. They did fall on their face. Their life isn't great. And they're not even like watching the internet. They're not even like around, you know.
Right.
And I know who some of those people are, right? And we're not going to hear from them because
True.
their life really did tank, and they got over their head in alcohol, drugs, partying, you know, the whole experience of life that they weren't ready for because they didn't know about
Absolutely.
it. That happens too.
And I heard someone else point out that there's also a bit of a selection bias, whereas because we're talking about a television show, and because the selection process involves producers and pre-interviews and stuff, you're going to be hearing from the people who the producers have decided are going to be able to come across well on television. And I think because let's just hone it down just to communication skills for a moment.
Yep.
Whether someone can communicate, however you want to describe that.
That's right. And it's a valid point because there are some people in Scientology. Not everybody did the comm course. Not everybody had all the same experiences, and not everybody just came out with their head on straight.
Right. And also, but what I was saying there is also because those characteristics that might make somebody come across well on television, I think are the same characteristics that might make someone very hireable or do well job hunting, or like the personability and the communication skills are very important traits in the job world.
Yep.
And I'm just saying, and God forbid anyone thinks I'm saying the people on the television show are the only ones who have that. No. There's a large pool of people like that.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see someone on TV who's like the guy who seems like he grew up in a cult. The guy who can't figure out how to speak normal English. The guy who just stares at you like without blinking. You know, those guys aren't going to be on the show.
And I hope people are really getting the point here, you know what I mean? Because it's not, anyway, because it's not some kind of favoritism or something. It's just that, you know, I mean, I'll just say, you know, I've been doing this YouTube thing for a while. I think I've done public speaking. People say I have a pretty good presence. I was not particularly thrilled with how I came across on TV. I think
nobody ever is.
Yeah, I think looking at, you know, myself on TV, I was like, wow, I really, really wish I could have done that again, because I was nervous as hell. I was not really very like as open as I normally am like right now, because I was just very, very nervous about the circumstances and stuff. And so I can only imagine if somebody who like myself, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, but just to talk to the point you're making, I am a good public speaker. I can talk to a camera, I can get out there, but you know, it's a nerve-wracking experience, and it's not for everyone.
No, totally.
To do that, you know.
Lights and cameras make me nervous.
Yeah.
You know, when I first sat down, like the first day of filming, I was like, it was in my house. We were sitting down. I'm trying to be comfortable, but it's just one of those things where like you go to talk and you're kind of already out of breath.
Yeah.
You know, like. Yeah. And I'm like, fucking cameras.
Exactly. Plus, I had not seen Mike in years. I had just met Leah. Right. So I'm like, I'm still a little celebrity shell-shocked, just a little bit, you know what I mean? Because she's really awesome, but it was nerve-wracking, and there's like these 20 people standing around on set, staring at you while you're talking. I mean, it's a thing, you know.
Yeah, I was fortunate that I already, you know, Mike and I had already been working together for at least a year and a half full time, and you know, I already felt like I knew Leah, even though I'd never met her, because you know Mike and her are so close, and So I was fortunate in that regard, and I was surprised that on camera I didn't look like I was as nervous as I felt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
so much time was spent crying.
Yeah. I know. Well, I thought you came across beautifully. I really did. I thought you were awesome. I'm just going to be self-critical about myself for eternity. So, okay.
Oh,
Well,
sorry. This is about the question of how do people land on their feet.
yeah. So let's go ahead and get to that. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about that. I think maybe we address first our own experiences and then maybe talk about other people that we've seen or experienced. So what was your thing?
So when I left the Sea Org, it was me and my wife left the Sea Org at the same time. She was pregnant, and we just basically said the day after we found out, we went to our respective ethics officers in the orgs that we worked for. I just straight up sat down and I said, Heather's pregnant, we're not getting an abortion. and the ethics officer said, okay, I'll get you the routing form. Like, we did not know that there was already stuff going on that was making the church change their policy of like twisting someone's arm to get an abortion.
Now what year was this?
May 2006.
Yeah, definitely advanced along the line. Yeah.
And let me clarify. They would have friends of yours, friends of Heather's, privately. You sure you're doing the right thing? Blah, blah, blah. But they're not going to put you into an office anymore with an executive or an ethics officer and scream at you and tell you you're destroying the world and you're a traitor and you're this and you're that.
Right.
Not because they're great people.
That's what happened to me in 1998.
Right.
That's how it went down back then. Was literally yelling and screaming in an office.
That's right. And I don't want to digress, but I think one of the reasons this question comes up is how does everyone land on their feet?
Yep.
Is most people think that you go from being a Sea Org member to being declared a suppressive person out in the real world. And that happens, but not usually. Like what happened with Mike Rinder, what happened with Marty Raffin, Tom DeVocht, and I know I'm leaving out tons of people. That's not the typical way it happens.
Mm-hmm.
You go from being in the Sea Org for 30 years to being on the street with nothing.
Yes.
So in my story, we left the Sea Org. We didn't leave Scientology in May of 2006.
Yep.
When you leave the Sea Org, as long as you do it the right way, which means you agree to get a sec check, which means an interrogation on the e-meter, you can leave the Sea Org as evidenced by everybody who has. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you leave the Sea Org the right way, you're still a Scientologist in good standing. They give you a bill, but you're still a Scientologist in good standing. You're not allowed to do Scientology auditing or training, but you're still in good standing. It means you're now, Chris, you were different because you went back to fucking Minnesota.
No, I get it. I'm just gonna say that there is the stigma no matter where you are as an ex-Sea Org member. So it's sort of in mediums. I'd say you're in medium standing, but technically speaking, you're absolutely right.
So let me clarify. Yeah. There's a stigma.
Yes.
But you're a Scientologist in good standing.
Yes, correct.
You're allowed to associate with Scientologists. They're allowed to associate with you.
Yep.
And if you pay your bill, you're like almost totally a normal Scientologist again. They can still treat you like shit for being an ex-Sea Org member when they want to.
Yeah.
But technically, if you pay your bill and you make amends, you're back in good standing. But that's not the point of my story.
Yep.
My point of my story is we left the Sea Org. We're still Scientologists in good standing. My wife's family were Scientologists living here in Clearwater, and my mother was still working for the church up in Philadelphia. So we came to Clearwater, and we stayed with my wife's father, my wife's parents, for a few months. My in-laws, their neighbor owned one of the local consulting companies, the Scientology Wise consulting companies that takes what's the word for non-religious? Is it secular or non-secular?
Secular.
It takes the secular administrative technology courses, and these consulting businesses sell those courses to non-Scientology business owners.
Yep.
They hired me as a consultant. Anyone who's done a lot of years on staff or in the Sea Org, and during that time studied a lot of the management information, is qualified to be in one of these consulting companies because you know the information they're trying to teach people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're primed for it actually as an ex-staff member.
Now, because I was already used to working 100 hours a week for expecting nothing in return, I was probably, with massive overtime, only making 40 grand a year at this company. But when you just come out of the Sea Org and you don't have rent and you don't have a credit card, 40 grand a year, it might as well be $1 million.
Yep. It's a lot of money in relative terms. That's right.
And things like an hour-long lunch break are like, I would be walking around the block going, what the fuck am I going to do with myself?
Yes.
What am I going to do for an hour?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what to do.
Yes.
I'd be calling my mom on the phone. Mom, what are you doing? I don't know. I'm just waiting to get back to work. I don't know what the hell to do.
Yep. Yep.
And so, and plus, because the job was easy for me, I mean, compared to the Sea Org, this was a cakewalk. I'm teaching people how to write up daily fucking action plans. I loved the job, and it was easy. And what someone else might characterize as working hard at the job was me working half time. And it's like a world of freedom. Oh my God, I'm getting a paycheck. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd already worked in the real world before I joined the Sea Org. It's not like this stuff was foreign to me. It's just that coming out of 4 straight years of doing the Sea Org, this felt like freedom. I mean, when you're in the Sea Org, going to the grocery store on Saturday morning feels like a vacation.
Exactly.
So I wind up at this consulting company immediately, like within the first week of being moving to Clearwater. I worked there for about a year, and these consulting companies, they try to run themselves like orgs. Anyway, I won't diverge because that'll get off subject.
Yep.
I quit. They gave me an ultimatum. They were going to assign me a lower ethics condition for taking a day off and asking to be paid for it. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm not kidding.
Wow.
And my senior was trying to go to bat for me, but they were giving her a time. She came to me and she said, you can either do the lower ethics condition or you can quit. I was like, oh, I quit. because getting the lower ethics condition means a 30% pay cut until you're out of the condition. Right? I was like, I quit. I'm the highest producing consultant here. My clients pay the most money of any consultant here. You want to fuck me? I'm gone. Okay. So I freaked out for about 5 days because at this point we'd already bought a condo and moved into the condo. I had excellent credit. The day I turned 18, I got a secured credit card. So by the time I left the Sea Org, I was 26. I had immaculate credit. I already bought a house before I joined the Sea Org, and I had great credit. So, but that's another example where I lucked out a little bit. By the time I left the Sea Org, I had great credit, and then I got a job paying me 40 grand a year. I could buy a condo, no problem.
Was Heather working, or was she at home with the kid?
So at this point, she was probably still at home. Heather's the kind of person who can't stand not working. So at some point, even with the baby, she did go and get a job. I think she was like the office manager receptionist for a local Scientology mechanic. She just loves working. And 40 grand a year is not a lot of money to support a family of 3, necessarily, depending on what where you live, what the circumstances are.
No, for sure. But at this point, when you quit that job, were you a family of 3, or a family of 3 because it was you, Heather, and the one child?
The first baby.
Okay, because you have 3 now.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I quit that job. Now, because I'd been there for a year, and because they were giving me the biggest clients, because I was the best consultant. I'm not just trying to pat myself on the back. I'm trying to paint a good picture of how this story went. My clients loved me. And you'll see this is a theme that moves forward in my story. The biggest client at this company operated 17 physical therapy clinics in South Carolina and in Vail, Colorado. And they had sent the 3 business owners to this consulting company to study this information, but none of them have the time to implement all of this. And that was one of their biggest problems. Is it's one thing to come down here and study it. It's another thing to implement it across 17 clinics. Like, just because we study it doesn't mean we understand it. And just because we understand it doesn't mean we have the time to implement it.
Right.
So they hired me to do this for them full time. Every month I would be in Vail, Colorado. They had 7 clinics or 10 clinics throughout the Vail Valley, all the way from Denver to Silverthorne and Frisco and Vail and Breckenridge and all that stuff. And in Greenville and Spartanburg, South Carolina, they had a bunch of clinics. Chris, I was just teaching these guys how to do conditions, formulas, and battle plans. and I was making six figures, working 3 weeks a month.
Wow.
That's not
Talk about a cakewalk.
that's not typical.
Right.
And if anything, I probably get accused of taking my experience and thinking that should be everyone's experience, and I'm not doing that. But just understand, you have people going, how can people leave the Sea Org and make anything of themselves?
Right.
Well, here's an example. It's one thing to say, well, you got lucky because you had Scientologists to fall back on. That's true. It's one thing to say, well, you were able to find a job quickly, and that's true. But the reason I like this part of the story is because these were non-Scientologists paying me six figures to help them implement information that they had decided was valuable to them. This is not a pitch for people to go out and do Scientology management courses.
Oh God, please don't, because it is.
I'm trying,
yeah.
but I am trying to show how there were skills and knowledge that I got through my experience on staff and in the Sea Org that, whether someone wants to agree with it or disagree with it, did translate to the real world. That's my only point.
Yep.
That's my only point.
Yeah, I get the point.
And so that went on for a while. That job went on. And after about a year and a half, they said, look, we'd like you to move here and work for us full time. Like, as opposed to, so I would be in one of the states for 2 weeks a month and the other state for 1 week a month, and then I would not work. And then it would swap. I would be in the other state for 2 weeks. And they said, okay, if you want to move to South Carolina, we'll give you basically any job that you want, but otherwise we want to basically bring someone in full time. Okay, so I said, I'm not moving to South Carolina. My family's in Clearwater. So that job ended, and I started freaking out again. I was like, oh my God, I just had like the dream job of the fucking century. And you know, Clearwater's dominated by Scientology employers, and Scientology employers do not pay well.
Yeah,
so,
I'm surprised you actually stayed. That surprises me. Was it just the family connection?
We were still full-on Scientologists at this point.
I know, but still, I'm just saying. I mean, it's...
Yeah, my wife's family's still here. Just
okay.
It never would have even occurred to me to move to South Carolina, where we knew nobody, had no family, for a job working for people who weren't Scientologists, and also there's no org. So even though I never gave a shit about getting auditing, you know, my wife did. So it wasn't even a conversation we entertained.
Okay.
So then I'm like freaking the hell out. But there's a local Scientology company called Postcard Mania, who's like the #1 Scientology employer in Clearwater.
Yes.
And they had, anyway, I ended up getting a job there as one of the executive positions, making less than half. But I was so thrilled to even be making that. You have no idea. Like, making six figures was so much more than I needed, as evidenced by the fact that I was willing to take a job making half.
Wow.
And then Postcard Mania, this was going through the recession. So this was like 2007, 8-ish. Now we're into 2008. And Postcard Mania made most of its business off of mortgage companies and insurance companies, home insurance companies and mortgage lenders. And when the real estate market took a shit, their business took a shit as well. So all the executives took several rounds of pay cuts. And I was like, this is not good. Somewhere, but it was fine. It was a job. And it was fine. I didn't really enjoy it. Somewhere in there, a famous Scientologist named Kurt Flashback was looking for someone to help him do a new thing with his business he was trying to do. And Kurt is in the investment research world. Kurt used to manage a hedge fund. Kurt and his brothers, the Flashback brothers, are famous in Scientology because they were the first ones to donate $1 million to Scientology. They were the first ones to do the magical superpower rundowns. Not all of them did them. And they used to manage $1 billion hedge fund back in the 80s. And they were actually famous even within Wall Street. They were famous.
Exactly.
In the real world. I alluded earlier to the fact that we had bought a condo. Our realtor for that purchase was Marion Henry, who is Tom Cruise's sister. And because she's Tom Cruise's sister, she's connected to absolutely everybody in Clearwater. And I had never met Kurt. I'd never met any of the Flashbacks. But Marion had sent me an email that Kurt had sent her, or that someone that worked for Kurt sent her, saying that they were looking for this position. And she said, I think you would be great for this. And so I basically called Kurt and I was like, hey, let's talk about this. Talked to him a couple times. He hired me. I was like, oh my God, thank Jesus. Oh my God. Can't stand working at Postcard Mania anymore. And he hired me starting at the same rate that Postcard Mania had hired me. Except I'd already gone through a couple rounds of pay cuts at Postcard Mania because all the executives were taking pay cuts. So I started working for Kurt, and that was a great move. One of the places I'll say make a mistake is I will take some of my personality traits or whatever, and I'll seem to draw a straight line between the fact that I have those traits and the fact that I grew up in Scientology. And it seems like I'm saying Scientology created those traits in me. And I'm willing to acknowledge that I'm not capable of knowing that. Many people have said to me, just because you've turned out X way doesn't mean Scientology did that to you. You could have turned out that way no matter what path you went on, or it could have gone better for you. And they've called into question whether it's legit or logically sound for me to say, well, because I walked this path and because this is how things went for me, this path is why things went for me this way.
Yeah.
So that's a preface to me saying, because I was such a fucking energetic hard worker. No, I think that's because of how we were, let's just say, conditioned in the Sea Org and on staff to be really energetic hard workers. I mean, if you're going to succeed in that environment, that's what you have to be.
Yep.
I just kind of flourished and prospered, to use a Scientology phrase, working for Kurt. I learned all about the stock market. I learned all about, all about short selling. Kurt's kind of famous for being a short seller.
So you now were in an environment where you were learning a whole new skill set.
That sure as hell translated into the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
A question I have is, it's obvious that there were skills and things you'd learned in Scientology that translated over because you stayed in the culture and world of Scientology. You know, the secular side of Scientology or whatever. So you were able to maintain those connections, and so you were able to, those skills transferred over. Were there any other skills that Scientology trained you in, or that you had, or whatever, that also, besides the wise stuff, because that's obvious, right? The org board and all the administrative stuff. Were there any other skills or specialized things that transferred over?
Well, this is where it gets into that gray area of, well, is it a Scientology skill or is it inherent personality traits? Because I have said over and over again that there are only the ability to be a good communicator and a hard worker is all any fucking employer wants. Did Scientology give me those things? I don't know. But I'm not going to be standing up on the mountain and be like, no, it didn't. How the fuck do I know it didn't? I don't fucking know.
Right.
But you make a good point. If I had just wound up kicked out of Scientology overnight, nobody would have been paying me six figures to teach people how to write conditions, formulas, and battle plans. So there's a good portion of circumstance and luck, but that's always going to come into play. If someone's willing to do whatever it takes to get to where they want to get, there's always going to be a certain amount of circumstance and luck. Almost everything in life it comes down to who you know. It's how you got to know them. That's like part of the work is, okay, how did you get to know them?
That's right. Networking, who you know, not what you know.
So people who leave the Sea Org but are still in Scientology benefit greatly from the networking benefit of Scientology.
That's right. That's right.
People who wind up like Mike did, where you just walk out the door and you've given away every connection you've had for the last 30 years. Yeah, those guys are going to have a very hard time. And the fact that people like Camilla Anderson is someone who has an amazing story. But all these other guys, Mike, Tom, and everyone I'm not mentioning every time I say Mike and Tom. They have great stories that are much different than mine because they honestly had to try a lot harder than I had to try.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said, are there any real world things that translated? There's nothing you learn in Scientology that translates other than, Scientology has an intense focus on communication. And I'm not saying that means all Scientologists are great communicators. I'm saying they have an intense focus on it. So
They do.
There are people who are going to take a lot out of that, and there are people who are going to take nothing out of that. But say what you will, there's an intense focus on it.
Well,
if you're
no, I get it. I want to switch gears a little bit because yes, there are the Scientology specific classes and stuff like that are supposed to give you specific things like communication and getting along with others and that kind of stuff. But there are skills you learn in the Sea Org that do translate over, and this is what I was asking. Well, this is really what I was asking about.
I didn't say there wasn't. Communication was just the first one I was going to mention.
Yeah, okay, fine. Because like, for example, I learned graphic design in the Sea Org.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, some people learn construction and renovation.
Exactly. Like Tom, that was yeah, Tom.
Unlocked.
Yeah, like for example, or John, JB.
Oh, JB's an excellent example.
Yeah.
John Brousseau.
Yep.
You just jogged my memory.
Yeah.
Because my job on staff and in the Sea Org always required me to be either helping other people learn or managing other people and getting them to do their job. And because you could say I had 15 years experience of working one-on-one, face-to-face with people who I was managing. Like I had 4 or 5 levels of juniors. Now you can be in that position and you can fail, or you can be in that position and you can succeed. And I don't, to what extent Scientology is responsible for whether you fail in those roles or succeed in those roles, I can't say, because if Scientology was responsible for everyone succeeding in those roles, then everybody would succeed in those roles. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So like people who get into those positions in Scientology and succeed, it's not logically sound to say, well, Scientology made you succeed in those roles. Maybe that's a personal thing.
Yep.
But because I at least had that experience in the real world, being able to manage people is hugely translatable. Being able to manage people, or to manage people through people, to manage multiple echelons, that translates. So I guess my point isn't that Scientology gave those skills to me, but it's a skill I knew I had and honed during my time working for Scientology.
All right.
I won't say L. Ron Hubbard gave me that gift. That would be giving him way too much credit.
No.
I won't say John Lundeen or David Miscavige gave me that gift, because they weren't that great at it.
No, John Lundeen certainly leaves something to be desired when it came to running people, that's for sure.
So I guess I do have to watch sometimes when I tell my story, whether I'm presenting it as this is something I gained in Scientology, or this is just experience I had in Scientology. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, no, I was never on some of those technical, like drawings using CAD software. I was never on the construction crews, really.
Yeah.
But those guys, like John Brousseau's done very well for himself based on the skills. Now, did the Sea Org give him those skills, or was that simply the Sea Org is what he was doing when he learned those skills? Like, I'm sure he's not like, well, gosh darn it, the Sea Org helped me so much. I'm so thankful for them that they gave me these skills.
Yeah, I know.
No,
the attitudes and all that. I think it's a little bit of a semantics game, a little bit, when we get into that sort of thing, because,
right.
Like there were things that I learned in the Sea Org that I had to learn because of what I was doing in the Sea Org. So
Right.
Would I have learned those things outside the Sea Org? Well, I could have, but would I have? I don't know. But I did learn them. They were translatable skills, and so they translated.
That's right. And I guess you also just reminded me that we're answering the question, how do Sea Org members land on their feet? We're not answering the question, did Scientology help you?
Exactly.
So that was a conversation I'm having in my head with other people.
Exactly.
But you can see this is a good example of how just because you're in the Sea Org, yeah, you're in a cult. Yeah, you're in a bubble. But it's not like you're living in the woods with the Amish.
Right.
I mean,
Pack Base is not the village, you know?
That's what I meant, the village.
Yes.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. And you are forced to learn things because there are skills that you need. You know, one thing I'll just comment on real fast since I just thought of it is that I had my attitude adjustment coming out of the Sea Org with those skills was that there's so much ego pump in the Sea Org that you think because you have some skills in doing something that you're the best at it, and that everything Scientology does is amazing and wonderful. You know, Scientology's event production is the most amazing event production ever. And then and then you come out and you see how over the top and crazy and nonsensical it looks, and you're like, wow, I really used to think we were the shit, and actually no, we were not the shit. You know, so there is a little bit of a reality adjustment about, you know, you think you're the bomb.com at some of these things, and then you come out in the real world and you see people who really are the bomb.com, and you're like, I got some things to learn, you know.
Right.
So there is that adjustment that to make as part of the adjustment process, I think.
True. I think for me, the thing that I would continually be made self-aware of was how quickly things would descend into confrontation.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's so normal in the Sea Org to just get stern and get serious.
Yep.
And
just
that ain't working in the normal companies.
Yep.
People will be like, oh my God, I was just emotionally abused. They'll be running to HR. And it doesn't matter if they were wrong. HR gets a complaint on you. You're going to sensitivity training.
Yeah. especially in the last 10, 20 years. Yeah, that's definitely true. Definitely true.
You can't be making jokes about people smoking crack, especially if it's a black woman. Don't do that. Don't do that.
That's good advice here. And
He said I smoked crack because I'm black. Wait, no, because you're crazy. It's because you're crazy. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you're not supposed to say shit like that. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. No. But but I will definitely, actually, on the topic though, that's actually a really good point. You do not understand boundaries, and you do not understand limitations coming out of the Sea Org. You are so conditioned to have no social veneer. Right?
And you think everybody curses as much as you do.
Exactly.
You just drop F-bombs like everyone's your buddy.
That's right.
It was like, I was doing that in South Carolina in the Bible Belt in meetings. They'd be like,
man. Yeah. You might be a great communicator, but you really got to learn to tone it the fuck down. You know? When you come out. And also there's I don't know if this was with you, but certainly with me, and I definitely had a lot more auditing than you did.
Yeah.
So this might have been a contributory factor, but I was oversharing like crazy the first year I came out. Right. And it aligns with the thing about boundaries and limitations. I didn't have any. So, you know, whatever was on my mind, I was saying it, and however I was feeling, I was talking about it, and I thought people wanted to know. You know, they would ask me, "Hey, how you doing? How's it going?" I thought it was an honest question. Well, I'll just tell you. You know,
I'm a little upset about a bad sexual episode I had last night. You're like Jim Carrey in Liar Liar.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a year of learning that adjustment of what's acceptable to say and how to talk, and all on the same thing.
Someone get an HR rep in here immediately.
Yeah.
Chris Shelton saying shit again.
I tell you, if I had gotten a normal job, that would have been happening all the time. You know.
That is so funny.
Yeah, and I just to talk about myself a little bit, when I came out, I also. I think there's a couple common denominators to those of us who maybe land on our feet faster and adjust faster than those I was referring to earlier who crash and burn so quickly. I think one of the common denominators could be, maybe not 100%, but I think it's common enough, is a familial connection outside the church to help support you.
No doubt.
You know, I think that is key, having a place to land.
Yeah.
I've written that as a thing to do, you know, when you come out of a destructive cult, is have a safe place to land.
Right.
And then the fact that you and me and others, because we maintained good standing with the church to one degree or another, we were able to stay in that world and stay in that culture. And so there's an automatic trust value assigned between Scientologists. There's oh, well, you're a Scientologist, so I know you're a good guy. I know I can trust you, and therefore I'll give you this chance at this job. Whereas if you had just been Joe Blow off the street, you might not have gotten it. So I think those two things are commonalities. I share those commonalities in that I landed at my parents, at my mom's place, you know, and she wasn't even still doing the Scientology thing, but my point is I had a place to land, get a resume together, get some stuff together. Then I went back to Twin Cities and I got a job with a Scientologist. Now, I didn't get a job with Kurt Flashback or with a really heavily established company, because there wasn't anything like that in Twin Cities. So I lost that job within 3 months because she was over-promising to me. You know, I'll come on out here, you'll have this job, it'll be great, you know, and everything will be fine. Well, within 3 months, yeah, well, maybe there were some over-promises and she couldn't really afford to keep me. To her credit, I will say, she helped me get a job with some non-Scientologists that she knew, and I landed in the subject of property management, which was not something I knew anything about. But I did know how to talk to people, and I did know how to organize my way out of a wet paper bag, so I was able to help them manage those properties and learn some ropes while I was doing it, and I did that for about a year and a half. So that got me along well enough until I came to Colorado and was actually able to get into the video industry, and that's where I really wanted to be working, and that's how I got the YouTube channel and started with all that. So now I just kind of work for myself. But those steps along the way helped groove me into working in the real world, acclimate to the real world, get along with them. And the luck that I had, the big lucky break for me, and it was a very lucky break, was the people that I ended up working for in the property management thing in Twin Cities were extremely understanding of my past. Because when I started working for them, I was already half in and half out of Scientology because I'd been going down the internet rabbit hole and all that stuff. And I was open with them about that. And they were very supportive, really big lucky break for me. And they saw the need for acclimation, the need that I had a near frantic attitude about working. You know, you talk about taking an hour lunch break. I mean, I was the same way. I was like, I was always buzzing that first year with, I need to be busy, I need to be working, I'm slacking right now, right? And I had it probably harder than you know, you or others, because I did the RPF,
right? Where
it is a conditioning program, and I was conditioned to never be standing still.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. Whereas you're right, you had it much harder than me. Whereas most of my time in the Sea Org was spent on posts where I could go chill out if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. Like, I was senior enough, I could go sit in my office and write reports if I wanted to.
Yep.
When I was I don't want to throw out the terminology, but well, I don't know how to describe it without. When I was the cramming officer at AOLA, if I didn't have anyone to cram, I would just sit in my fucking office and make sure the camera was off and do whatever the fuck I wanted. You know, read a book or whatever.
Exactly. And
I wasn't supposed to be doing that, but I had the freedom to do that.
Exactly. And I was never really in that position most of the time that I was in the Sea Org. It was very rare until I got on the road and got out and about. And then
I don't envy you. I don't envy you at all for that.
Yeah, then I had slack time, and then I had
right.
Yeah, then I had space and distance from the base, and that was what started getting my head clear. But the point about the franticness, the reason I lucked out is because as a boss, the partnership that I was working for, the two people that I was working for, saw that I had value to them, to do work for them and to help them. And so they helped me Like he would, with John, that my main boss would literally sit me down and say, "Okay, I'm going to give you this job to do, and it's totally." He would say this out loud. It's totally okay with me that this not get done until next week. You know, it's. I want you to take your time. I want you to not get this done today, because and he's also where I learned about quality over quantity, because I had not. You know, in the Sea Org, it's all, you know, it's all about quantity, statistics, you know, make it happen. And I had not realized when I was in the Sea Org how much they kill themselves on quality because of that. And so this was a real attitude adjustment for me at this job, to learn that this guy wanted really high quality work, and there was no way to get that high quality work at the speed with which I was used to working. But in the Sea Org, that was the standard. The speed and the franticness and the now of things was more important than the actual quality of something, right? And so, and this is another reason why the Sea Org fails so often, so many places, is because they are so frantic about that, and they whip stuff together, and it's really pretty half-assed stuff, you know?
There's no 1 year plan in an org.
There's no 3-month
here's
plan
where we
in
want to
the
be
org.
in a year.
Yeah.
As long as we're getting towards that, it's okay. It's always just next week.
That's right. That's right. And it's
funny because earlier in the video, I've alluded to the fact that my familiarity with the management side of Scientology had crossover. But then look how poisonous that concept of management is.
Exactly.
And yet somehow I at least had a mind when I was translating this over to go, no, that's bullshit. Like when I would sit down with my clients and review the graphs of their business, the courses they studied would just tell them to keep 12-week graphs. I'd be like, I want a 2-year graph. I want to be able to see where you were at before you walked in our door. I don't give a shit where you're at last month.
Yep.
I want to be able to see how you've been doing over the last 2 years. And the head registrar at the company came to me and he's like, I fucking love you. He's like, I've been saying this for fucking ever. I don't want to see their fucking 4-week, 12-week graphs. But that's an example where if I had just been literally married to what we had been taught in the Sea Org, I would have been like, no, L. Ron Hubbard says you manage on 3-week trends.
That's right.
And you apply condition formulas based on 1 week, and that's what you have to do to grow your business.
Exactly.
But I knew that didn't make any fucking sense.
Exactly.
So it's not that it all translates over. It sure as hell doesn't.
That's right. You have to, and I think those of us who also temper this stuff, like you were just saying, with common sense, and are able to learn, right? Like we pick stuff up, you know, and I think that those of us who have succeeded are the people who do that, right? Who aren't stuck in the fixation of the Scientology think, and it's this way and it's the only way, right? It's Hubbard's way or the highway. I know people who have come out who have been that way and failed. They bombed, right? And so I think that sort of I don't know the word to use. It's not a Scientology sense of this word, but like, you know, a dynamic ability to change. Like you can change with the motion and with the circumstances. Responsiveness, right. I guess maybe, you know, and learning are valuable skills that Scientology does not particularly teach you, but I think are inherent in some people, and so those translate well to being able to succeed.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so I think those common denominators of a safe place to land and staying in the Scientology world for a little while helped a lot of people to acclimate and learn real world skills if we didn't have real world skills from when we were in. I also, just on my own experience, I also wanted to say that, and I don't think I'm unique in this, I think other people have done something like this too. In the 9 months, or 8 or 9 months that I was routing out, that I was leaving, I was purposefully learning skills that I thought I was going to need when I was leaving. Because when I routed out, I don't know about you, but when I routed out, I had a lot of downtime. And I was supposed to be using that time doing renovations and grounds work. I was supposed to be up cleaning bathrooms and retiling showers and scrubbing floors and stuff. And I was like, yeah, screw that. And I didn't spend my time doing that because it was about 2 months into it. I was really hard working, doing all that work. The MAA would come along and check on me every day. And then suddenly the MAA wasn't coming along and checking on me every day. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm leaving. Why do I need to be doing this shit work? I should be prepping myself for what I'm going to be doing when I leave because I ain't fucking cleaning bathrooms when I leave. No way am I doing that work, right? I'm not going to go be a goddamn janitor at McDonald's. So, and I say that like, it's this horrible job. It's just the job I don't want. I'm sorry, but I don't. So I descended on Photoshop, Illustrator, and After Effects. And
while you were routing out?
Yes, and I had a laptop, and I sat in the CTO, and I learned that stuff. I did a lot of, I read books, whole books, and I did a lot of practicing and design work and stuff, and thinking that I was going to, and again, I still had that screwed up idea about quality and quantity, and so I thought I was going to be the fucking shit when I left, right? I'm like totally swearing right now. I never swear this much. It's all your fault, Aaron. And I thought I was going to be able to just slide right into graphic design when I left. And the first month of sending a resume around and trying to get graphic design work without any kind of education or formal education or bachelor's degree or anything, that was a rude awakening because I could not get that work. And that's what actually made me turn back to the Scientology world to try to get, okay, well, what do I have that I can use? Oh, well, I've got Scientology. So that's what turned me back into that direction because I wasn't getting any answers on my very Scientology-laden resume.
Right.
Because
see, I never had to send out resumes. I knew that was a losing idea.
And I didn't know any other way to get a job.
That's right. And earlier in my life when I was trying to get a job, like before I ever joined the Sea Org, going to a temp agency was how I always got jobs. Temp agencies don't care what your resume looks like. They just, because they're not hiring you. You're just filling in for someone.
Yeah.
So if you go to a temp agency and if you can talk, if you're not a complete caveman, if you can do some computer tutorials on how to do Microsoft Word and Excel, and if you can be a enthusiastic self-starter, once they see you and you come into the company, you can impress them and they will want to hire you. They're not going to be doing a background check to see if your fucking high school diploma is real.
That's right.
And honestly, that's my biggest tip to young Sea Org members. If they don't have a safety net, of course, they're never going to hear this message. Just get a nice suit, go into a temp agency. Lie your ass off on your resume, make it sound like you've been doing some stuff that makes some sense. Go in there, take the test. They're dying to get you a job. The temp agency gets paid when they get you a job. They want to get you a job.
Yep.
Go to a temp agency.
That's actually how I worked when I was a staff member. I did exactly what you just said.
Get your foot in the door. Don't be a caveman.
Well, I would get jobs through temp agencies, but then
when you were a staff member, I get it.
Staff member in Santa Barbara.
I get it.
And I would wow the company that I went to work for as a temp, and 3 times they hired me. I got 3 different jobs through a temp agency. I made it permanent by being a go-getter and being enthusiastic and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when I was routing out, it's amazing. They take people who are in executive positions and they make them do the dumbest stuff. I was scrubbing rust off of the weight plates in the security weight room. And I was having a blast.
That is hilarious. Of course
I'm sitting there with a Dremel and a wire attachment, scrubbing the rust off of the 45-pound weight plates. And of course, the security guys love me because I'm making their weights look good. And then people are like, what is he doing?
Yep.
I'm like, oh, no, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the thing, too, on the base. If people see you running around doing messed work, instantly it's known that you are in trouble of some kind.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows.
Especially if you're wearing civvies, if you're wearing, like, if you're out of uniform. Immediately they know you've been busted, you're in trouble, you're doing the lower conditions drill.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're routing out, you work on these AV skills. Is AV accurate?
Yeah.
And but the first job that you got, or the job you got at the property management company, that's not what you were doing. But the job, everything you've done after that has been AV related.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
And
some other
even
examples.
even in the property management stuff, I was bringing my skills to it. I was making flyers, promo things, and I as a manager in West US Management, I had learned Word, Excel. I was the grid master, right, as far as coming up with all these tracking grids and everything. So I knew Excel. I had taught myself programming when I was in the Sea Org, right? All self-taught. I taught myself how to do database management, web design, and I set up an intranet in the management organization. So I was the computer guy. So all of that. I was always bringing all my skill set to everywhere I was, trying to make things better or improve things or whatever. And those skills all translated into the real world in some fashion and enabled me to bring more than what was asked of me.
So let's touch on some other examples.
Yeah.
Mark Headley, when he was at Golden Era Productions, he was in charge of a film shoot crew. He was also a big kind of an AV guy.
That's right.
That has translated into he's built a wonderful business. He builds giant AV installations for museums.
That's right.
Things like that.
Yeah. He's got mad technical skills.
Yeah. I mean, Mark's like the master of that stuff.
And he learned that stuff at Gold. I mean, he went up there as a snot-nosed teenager. He didn't know anything. And
now let's make sure we're being clear, Chris. We're not telling people to join the Sea Org so they can get an AV education.
No, we are not.
Okay, we're just explaining how people land on their feet, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Please don't.
And so John Brousseau spent decades doing estates work and engineering work, and that has translated into I think he's still doing it, a career in the cruise liner industry of the guy who flies in to magically fix like emergencies on these ships.
Wow.
What's another? Mike's experience just navigating the legal world as the head of the legal, Office of Special Affairs. I know people like to, people like to think that Mike's job was to full-time makes people's lives miserable. That wasn't Mike's job. His job was to handle all the legal stuff that was going on and the PR stuff. That has translated into the real world.
Yeah, because in Scientology, the guys who were doing that work really did need to know what they were doing. I mean, legalese and all that is not for everybody.
Right.
And because you can't, when you come to managing legal cases and managing lawyers and dealing with that stuff, I imagine Mike is quite well educated on that topic because you can't be screwing around.
Lawyers can't believe he's not a lawyer.
Wow.
I mean, I know that the church likes to say Mike is paid as an expert witness. Maybe he has in the past. If he gets paid to consult on these cases, it's strategy. It's not expert witness. Let me tell you what a mean person David Miscavige is. No.
It's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that actually.
Yeah, a lot of people who I don't know how many this would be, but a lot of people who leave the Sea Org, depending on what their jobs were, have sales experience.
Oh my God,
There's
yes.
almost nothing more valuable in the marketplace than sales experience.
Really?
So,
you know why I'm surprised by that?
Ronnie Miscavige Jr. Manages a fucking barn full of real estate people in Virginia or something like that. Like, he's hugely successful.
That's so funny. I'm surprised by it only because I have separated myself from sales because I hated it.
Oh, I won't have anything to do with sales.
No, me neither.
It's
I
a
will
huge
never do sales. Never. I do sales. However, I'm good at it.
Well, here's the thing, Chris. I think I've convinced myself that I don't like sales. But here's what I tell myself. I like selling people on ideas. I do not like selling things for money. I cannot stand asking for money.
Yep.
But, you read certain books and they'll say, everyone in this world is a salesman. You just don't realize that's what you're doing. Right. And I go, that's fine. I just don't want your fucking money. Don't give me your money. I'll sell you on anything. Don't give me any money.
No, to this day, even with what I do and getting support for my channel and stuff, I am still so reluctant to. I always feel like such an oaf and a cad when I'm like, hey, I got a Patreon, guys. I always just feel kind of like, I shouldn't say anything about that for weeks now because I mentioned it once, you know.
I mean, Chris, even
I
in the
just,
Sea Org, I couldn't stand to even sell a book. Like, even as a
yeah.
course supervisor, I felt dirty telling my students, your check sheet says you need to buy this book. Is that okay? Like,
Well,
I couldn't stand it.
Well, I was a reg, dude, so I
Oh,
understand.
God.
Yeah,
Ugh.
for at AOLA, I sold OT levels for something like about 8 months, 7 or 8 months. I was
You were
doing.
selling people
I
the
was a
greatest
reg.
gift mankind could ever receive. How did
That's
that
right.
feel? You're so lucky. That job must have been so easy, Chris. People must have just been throwing their money at you.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. I that was actually where I learned that I actually am good at sales, though, and I did get better over that time. But I, you know, of course, I always paint things with the optimistic brush. I always look at the good more than the bad. I can't say, I can't look back at that time with pride or something because I was ripping people off. I mean, it's disgusting, you know. But
So these are all examples of how former Sea Org members land on their feet.
yes.
But needless to say, there are many that don't.
Yes, and that's right. And it's a silent. I don't know. That it's a silent majority. I don't really know. We don't know what the numbers are. You know,
because but this goes back to something I said in the beginning. The vast majority of people that leave the Sea Org have a Scientology safety net and network to fall back on.
Yes, I believe
Most
that is absolutely
don't
true.
Just jump over the fence and never come back. And even those that do jump over the fence, we're talking about ints because that's mostly where that happens.
Yep.
They very often go back and route out the right way.
Yep.
And still have the safety net of Scientology network to fall back on.
That's right.
Until they get into trouble and get kicked out. But by that time, they usually at least have a job and some friends and a car.
That's right. That's right. Because I knew when I got out that there were 3 things I needed to take care of immediately. And if I didn't, and until I had these 3 things taken care of, I had my attention on nothing else. And that was transportation, food, and a roof over my head.
Right.
And those were the 3 things that had to be dealt with now. And I will say that I think the unique thing that you get from the Sea Org, pretty universally, not everybody got this, but I think most people get it, is the work ethic. I mean, you come out and you are ready to work. I mean, you're not allergic to work. You're not allergic to any part of work.
Right.
And that is, you know, as beneficial as you make it out to be, you can make it into something horrible, or you can use it to your advantage. And I think most of us have used it to our advantage to some degree, and learned over time to chill the hell out.
Right.
That it doesn't have to be that frantic.
And there's one other thing. Again, this is just taking a negative into a positive. You aren't so sensitive that someone yelling at you causes you to cave into a puddle. You're used to being fucking yelled at. Yep. Now, not in like a, oh, yes, sir, yeah, no, sir, like not like in a submissive way. Someone getting angry at you does not make you crumble. That's something I found in people. Now, maybe it's because I've got a personality trait where I can get angry quickly. But when I have people working for me, one of the things I value the most is when they don't just fall into 1,000 little pieces the moment they can tell I'm upset with them. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not saying, oh, you should be fine with people yelling at you, but this goes back to those communication drills. The bull bait. There's the drill where you're used to having someone yell at you and scream at you, so that, and your job is to be like, yeah, you're not affecting me with this in any way, shape, or form right now, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm not saying join Scientology so you can be practiced being yelled at, screamed at, so that you're better in the workplace. I'm just saying it's one of those things where if a former Sea Org member winds up in a job and the employers aren't used to having people willing to work 80 hours a week. Employers aren't used to having people who aren't asking for a raise every 3 months. Employers aren't used to having employees who don't run to HR every time you look at them sideways.
Mm.
And that's all I'm saying there.
Okay, fair enough.
As a former Sea Org member, I never would have gone to HR to complain because somebody said something mean to me. And so
no.
It's just something
it took me
that
a long time,
it's an inadvertent benefit that may somewhat translate over, which is you have kind of thick skin. That's what I mean.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because there's two sides to this actually. You're right that there is a benefit to that. I also will say that I put up with more abuse than I should have in
That's true.
my property management job. Now, I am thankful, so thankful to the experience that I had with that couple. And I don't say this to denigrate or be down on them because they were so helpful in the cost benefit analysis. But the guy I worked for had a temper, and he did make it known sometimes, and it was something I put up with longer than I should have.
You're totally right. And
So,
even working for Kurt, I had the same thing.
yeah. So there's a pro and a con to what you just talked about.
And also, Chris, again, as you mentioned before, your experience of doing the RPF, which many other former SEERG members have done, also is a huge variable in that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of people I don't want to name who I know.
Yep.
Have done, only because I don't have their permission.
Yeah, yeah.
Who've done the RPF, and because that experience was so fucking damaging to them, they don't have that thick skin.
Yep.
They're very, very sensitive to being treated poorly like that.
That's right.
Whereas because I didn't have that RPF experience, it's different for me.
Yep.
Like you've alluded to, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would say that the RPF was very contributory to a PTSD situation.
Right.
I'll just put it that way. Right.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's not like anything else.
Right.
Enough said. So, as far as other people landing on their feet, so we've seen the people on Leah's show. We have our friends. We have people we've known. Have you seen, I don't know, have you seen people crash and burn irrevocably, like they just never come back from that?
I would have to say that those people never would have just popped up on my radar.
Yeah.
I'm aware of them, but they're like the most severe and extreme circumstances. Like, you know, there's some son of a SEERG member who literally a homeless.
Yeah, Obolinski.
Homeless, addicted to drugs.
Yep.
Blew off his hands. Like literally has no fucking hands.
That's right. And he went a little wacko. He was a second gen, raised fully in the Sea Org from birth, and had no real world experience, and also was a bit off when he was in.
That's right, and that's always a huge, variable.
So you're gonna have I will chalk up some of that to, not to write them off. I'm not trying to be discompassionate or be a dick, but in any group of people, you're gonna have a small percentage of them who just are wackadoodle.
So there's one guy I'm thinking of who, depending on how you want to define success or failure, was failing for a long time. And this is one of the kids who grew up in the Sea Org and grew up at the ranch and everything. Like literally no education, literally no nothing.
Yep.
But because the guy doesn't know how to take no for an answer, and because the guy just, like in a good way, the guy doesn't seem to have the ability to be depressed. Again, I'm not saying Scientology gave that to him. That's a personality trait.
Yep.
He just keeps going forward, and he does sales jobs, and well, like I said, he can't take no for an answer, so he's in sales. He didn't do sales in Scientology. He didn't do sales in the Sea Org. And he's younger than me. He's become what I would call a success. Just not that we're not talking about translatable skills from Scientology, but we're talking about how someone who grew up in the ultimate bubble, the ultimate cult bubble of childhood Scientology in the Sea Org, and has still been able to do well and be happy and have a family and support himself and his family. And so there you go. How much of that is just sheer luck, native personality, luck of the circumstantial benefit, because he does still have the Scientology network to leverage. Although he doesn't work for a Scientologist. He doesn't work for a Scientology company. So the examples are just all over the place.
They are. They really are. And it's been interesting talking about this because I've not broken this down with anyone for this length of time. And it really does highlight that it is so individual for every
Right.
person's gifts, talents, innate abilities, what their experience was in Scientology, because everybody's is so different. The training that people get is wildly variable from one person to the next. The luck of the draw with what seniors they had, what juniors they had, what positions they held. I mean, because, in the Sea Org, you're moving around a lot. If you're on a post for over 2 years, that's a long damn time to be on a job.
That's right.
It's because there's so much, transferring around and stuff because of the nature of the Sea Org world. So it really is variable. And I guess I would say for people watching that, yeah, some people coming out, they really do need a helping hand. They really need help. And there are some people who come out who can land and they can just make it work. And
That's right.
it's a variable thing, So I think we really, it's a difficult answer. It doesn't satisfy a lot of people to say this, but it's kind of a case by case basis.
Totally. And if anyone's actually stuck with it and watched this entire video, I will say that there is a whole network in place that exists across the entire country of former Sea Org members and Scientologists who are willing to provide a place to stay and a job to anybody fresh out of the Sea Org who does not have a safety net to fall back on and needs that help. And we haven't quite figured out how to make Sea Org members aware that this help exists. I do have an idea. Not willing to publicly discuss it yet. But the fact that the thing exists, and I think just the fact that I'm going to keep talking about it, and I think we should all keep talking about it. I'm going to keep mentioning it on the Facebook page. People talk to people. People talk to people who talk to people who talk to Sea Org members.
Yep. And that's right. And that's really the only way such a network can exist, by the way. Because there have been ideas about, well, maybe somebody should start something, or there should be a place, or there should be a this or that. And I always, come across like a big jerk because I poo-poo it. But the reason I poo-poo it is because look at what happened to the Lisa McPherson Trust. I mean, the church is going to come down on something like that, like a ton of bricks.
Right.
And they have the resources to do so. So it has to remain an informal, buddy network sort of thing. And it always has existed. There's always been people from, 10 years ago who have helped others who come out.
Exactly.
With this. And now it's a bigger network because there's more of us and we're in better touch than we have ever been through social media and through our own, lines. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I have received no fewer than 3-4 emails from people, non-Scientologists, never been in, who have offered their homes, who have offered assistance.
Absolutely.
So those resources definitely exist.
And it's also one of the benefits to having as many people as possible being sort of, I don't know if high profile is the right word, but making themselves known and available.
Yep.
So that when someone does leave the Sea Org and someone finds out about it, someone goes, oh, I can message, and there's like 10 or 15 people. I know I can message this person. And if I message this person, he's going to know who else to message.
Exactly. I'm a resource. You're a resource. They are out there.
Right. And that's why it's also one of the reasons I want as many contributors as possible to be on this Facebook page and making themselves known.
Yep.
Because I want them to make themselves known as a source of help for others who need it.
Exactly. Right. Good. Well, with that, we're probably at a good place to wrap up here. I think this was a productive chat.
Absolutely.
We were kind of around in different places, but I think we covered all the bases that we wanted to cover. And
should we talk more about whether LRH is a racist?
We'll continue
People love
that
conversation.
I know.
We love that conversation.
He was, damn it, and we'll talk about that more later.
I am supposed to figure out how to fit into you. Chris, do not invalidate my knowingness, okay? Do not invalidate my knowingness.
Don't make me use my tone 40 intention on you.
All right, good timing. My phone's at 10%.
Okay, cool, man. All right, well, thanks a lot for coming around, folks. Please leave your comments, good, bad, or sideways, in the comment section below here on YouTube. I'm sure we will post this all over Facebook and various places.